Hey guys, Kevin here from thesportsgeek.com, and in this video, Ian's going to go over his DraftKings CFL Week 3 picks. If you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you click the like button or the thumbs up here on YouTube to support them, and I'll have Ian back to do his picks each and every week. I know a lot of you guys made some money last week, so let's try to do it again this week.
This is Ian Cameron contributing to thesportsgeek.com, and I am back for the second straight week to look ahead at CFL DraftKings for the upcoming week of Canadian Football League action for Week 3. A lot of interesting games, a lot of interesting DFS possibilities on the slate for Week 3 upcoming, so we're going to talk about a bunch of them here in this video. Thanks for the kind words and comments about our Week 2 DraftKings video, which was our debut edition. Appreciate it. We're going to hope to continue to give you great information and great picks to fill out your DraftKings lineup on a weekly basis in the CFL. So let's take a look at Week 3. Let's start, of course, as always, at the pivot, the quarterback position for Week 3 in the CFL. A lot of interesting options this week. Not surprising at all to see Trevor Harris, the most expensive quarterback on the board, $10,600. I know this guy has done fantastic here in 2 weeks, but like the Enterprise Rent-A-Car old lady says, sounds expensive. It sure does sound expensive, Trevor Harris, because as good as Trevor Harris has been, and he's been phenomenal, there's no disputing that. 82% completion rate, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions this season, at 158 QB rating. Fantastic, off the charts performance level from Trevor Harris. Sustainability is one thing, and one thing you have to consider, because he's been fantastic, but now you're playing a Calgary Stampeders defense. The secret's out. Trevor Harris isn't going to take anyone by surprise anymore. Everybody knows how good he's played. You know, CFL DFS players, they're going to be looking to have Trevor Harris in their lineups this week. I don't think there's any denying that with the numbers he's put up. And so same too with Chris Williams, his receiver. We'll get to him when we talk about wide receivers. The bottom line is you're paying a premium here for Trevor Harris, and he is facing still a capable Calgary defense, a pretty good Calgary Stampeders defense. So I would be a little bit leery about looking at Trevor Harris this week. Mike Riley next up, $10,400. I think Mike Riley's a decent option at quarterback. The bye week should help this Edmonton offense. I think they're going to have a lot more traction this week. Mike Riley can play well against Saskatchewan's defense, which is still a work in progress. They got burned for a couple big passing plays by Ricky Ray of the Toronto Argonauts last week. So I think Mike Riley has the chance to have a big game there, but $10,400, again, pretty expensive option there. You've got Bo Levi Mitchell, $9,600, Drew Willie, $9,400 of Winnipeg, Saskatchewan's Darian Durant, $9,000, Ricky Ray, $8,900. Jeremiah Masoli, $8,800. I like Riley a lot if I'm going to pay for a more expensive option. And I also like Jonathan Jennings at a very, very cheap option at quarterback, $7,800 for Jonathan Jennings on DraftKings. The BC quarterback's not getting much love, not getting much respect. And I know his numbers don't pop out at you. They're not jaw-dropping by any stretch. He's got 476 passing yards, just 1 touchdown. He's averaging 14.7 DK points per game. I know that's not fantastic by any stretch, but you have to keep in mind the competition. He faced a good Calgary defense in Week 1, one of the better defenses in the league. And last week against Hamilton, those were terrible conditions to throw the football in. The wind was bad last week at Tim Hortons Field. I know because I was there. I attend every Ticat home game at Tim Hortons Field. It was terrible wind conditions. Couldn't get any sort of rhythm throwing the football going, either quarterback, including Jonathan Jennings for BC. Now you're indoors in the friendly confines of BC Place Stadium. You're up against a Toronto secondary with rookie cornerbacks in the defensive backfield. Injuries already as well in that secondary for Toronto. So there's some concerns here that this past defense of the Argos could get picked apart a little bit by Jonathan Jennings. I think he's going to have a good game, and I think he's a value option for sure this week at the quarterback position. $7,800, Jonathan Jennings. I think he's a worthwhile consideration at that price. Moving on to running backs, you've got Jerome Messam of Calgary. He's a guy that stands out because he had a very good game last week, 134 rushing yards against Winnipeg. Huge game on the ground for him. I think he can get it going this week as well against Ottawa. And of course, being on the road, I think Calgary's going to look to keep drives going, take time off the clock, and that's where Jerome Messam, big, powerful running back, could really come into play there. And I think John White's a good option at running back this week for Edmonton, $7,000 on DraftKings. John White, to me, could take advantage of a Saskatchewan defensive front that's been gutted. They traded Sean Lemon, who was disgruntled, to the Toronto Argonauts. So some more shuffling of personnel for Saskatchewan on that defensive line. Injury they suffered in practice as well this week to one of their key defensive linemen. A couple of injuries overall along that D-line. And when you've got a little bit of a weak D-line, that's where the running game could hurt you a little bit. So I think it's an optimal matchup here for John White, the Edmonton Eskimos running back, going up against that somewhat depleted Saskatchewan defensive front. He's pretty solid option, at least in my opinion. $7,000 at running back. If you're looking for a value option at running back, maybe you go all the way down, look at maybe an Anthony Allen for BC. Anthony Allen might start this week because Jeremiah Johnson is injured and is no sure thing to suit up. You're going to want to keep an eye on that. But if Anthony Allen does indeed start at running back for BC's, $4,500 might be a little bit of a value option there. Other than that, not a heck of a lot sticking out to me at running back this week. But definitely John White, Jerome Messam, two quality options, I think, there at the running back position this week. At wide receiver, I think you look at it, Chris Williams is going to be owned by so many guys this week in CFL DraftKings. I mean, Chris Williams, to me, has been just fantastic with the chemistry with Trevor Harris. It's uncanny to see how well they've got this chemistry going so quickly with this Ottawa Red Blacks offense. I mean, his numbers are just ridiculous. 363 receiving yards, 15 receptions, 181 receiving yards per game, 3 touchdowns already for Chris Williams, 39.5 DK points. Yeah, that's right, 39.5 DK points per game on average through the first 2 games. Phenomenal. I mean, he's the highest priced receiver on the board for a reason. I mean, Chris Williams has been that good, but I'd be looking to stay away from not only Chris Williams, but Trevor Harris as quarterback this week. He's going to be highly owned. I think you got to sometimes fade the popular picks here when you're talking DraftKings and DFS. So I think Chris Williams is a stay away for me this week. He could go off again. Trevor Harris might have another good game, but again, it's going to be highly owned. Calgary's defense is no joke. They're pretty good. I think that's probably a situation where I look elsewhere. And maybe you look to Emmanuel Arsenault, $8,000 for BC. That's pretty good value for their top receiver. And again, that Toronto secondary, I mentioned it, I think can be picked apart a little bit. Could be a big day for Emmanuel Arsenault. There's a few BC receivers I kind of like this week. Emmanuel Arsenault is one. If you go on down the list, Nick Moore at $6,500, I think that's pretty decent value. I think the more things go along with him, he's going to get better. He'd had 5 receptions. He's got 8 receptions so far on the season, 76 yards, 38 yards per game, only 8.8 DK points per game so far, but I think that number's going to go up. I think Nick Moore is going to get more comfortable in this BC offense, coming over from Winnipeg, returning to the Lions this season. If you really want to go down the value train, how about Sean Gore of BC at $4,600? This is a guy that, again, with some concerns about Toronto's pass defense, guy that might be able to provide some value, be solid, 16.2 DK points per game so far this season, 11 receptions, 183 yards, 91.5 receiving yards per game so far for Sean Gore. I think that's solid value. Sean Gore at $4,600 this week for the BC Lions, not a bad option there. I think you look at some Edmonton receivers, that's not a bad idea. Darrell Walker and Adarius Bowman are second and third in terms of highest priced receivers this week on the DraftKings board. Walker at $9,900, Bowman at $9,600, rightfully so. I mean, Saskatchewan's defense is going to take some time to gel. That's become clear for sure. Again, dealing with injuries as well, that's also a concern, so they could be able to have a solid day. Naaman Roosevelt. I'm going to go right back to Naaman Roosevelt for Saskatchewan. I talked about him as a value guy coming into the season. He had a pretty solid first game against Toronto last week, even though Saskatchewan lost. Pretty solid numbers last game. 9 receptions, 113 receiving yards. 22.3 DK points. So I liked what I saw to Naaman Roosevelt, a guy who I think is going to become a focal target for Darian Durant on this Saskatchewan offense. So I think Roosevelt at that price this week of $7,500, that's not bad. And Winnipeg's offense, for as much as I don't like them and I don't like him. I haven't liked anything I've seen out of the Blue Bombers offense. Weston Dressler's back this week from his injury that he suffered early in Week 1 against Montreal, and I think having him at about $7,500, not a bad option this week for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. If there's one guy on this Winnipeg offense I'd take, it's probably Dressler at $7,500. Drew Willie's talked in the media all week long, I love Weston Dressler. Weston Dressler this, Weston Dressler that. Weston Dressler's a god, he can do no wrong. Okay, you didn't really say that, but you get my point. You catch my drift. Drew Willie was going on about how good and valuable a receiver Weston Dressler is, and I think he's probably going to have a pretty good game. I mean, he's probably going to be the guy that Drew Willie looks to. Check downs, he can catch the ball in short yardage as well. Those short to intermediate routes, he's very good at that. He's as much a short to intermediate receiver as he is a deep ball receiver, if not more. So I think Drew Willie's going to be looking for Weston Dressler early and often when his Blue Bombers take on Hamilton this week. So Dressler at $7,500, I don't think is a too bad of an option either. I think he's worth a look probably as well. Flex positions. Again, we talked about some of the wide receivers and running backs to look at this week. Maybe Hazelton again. He did catch a touchdown from Ricky Ray last week for Toronto. If I had to pick a receiver from the Argos, worth a look. And I'll tell you who is worth a look actually at wide receiver. I missed it just now, but I'm going to go back to it because it just popped in my head to mention this guy for the Hamilton Ticats. Terrence Tolliver's out. He's not going to play in this game. Taking his spot is going to be Tyquan Underwood, and he has got lots of talent. He is a very talented, good receiver. He's got the height, got the hands, got the speed, and I think he's going to be a guy that could do some damage. You can get Tyquan Underwood $3,900 on DraftKings. I am reaching into the bargain bin with this one, but I think that is tremendous value for Tyquan Underwood. I know Tasker, Owens, Fantus are the guys that are going to get the majority of looks, probably from Jeremiah Masoli, the Hamilton quarterback, with this Ticats offense, but I think Tyquan Underwood could be a sleeper this week. $3,900, that's just tremendous value. A cheap option that has the chance to lead to big production, or at least bigger production than he's being priced. So Tyquan Underwood at $3,900, worth a look. And defense and special teams to wrap up the video. I'm worried about Edmonton's defense. They're the highest priced defense, $5,600. Not very good in Week 1. Lots of new faces on that side of the ball. I don't really have much interest looking at the Edmonton defense. The Ticats defense certainly is worth a consideration because Winnipeg's offense has been sluggish. Calgary's defense always worth a look, although Ottawa's offense with Trevor Harris, as we've mentioned, has been pretty darn efficient. However, if you want to fade maybe the majority of DraftKings players, maybe Calgary's defense is the way to go, because I'm sure Ottawa offensive players, namely Harris and Williams, are going to be stacked by a lot of people this week. So maybe just as a contrarian opinion, you look at Calgary's defense. Toronto's defense I don't really trust. They've got some injuries. It's going to be a tough matchup. Second road game in a row in BC. Saskatchewan's defense, again, dealing with injuries, especially on the D-line against a very good Edmonton offense that has most of their starters back and probably will play better than they did on the offensive side in Week 1. Red Blacks defense, maybe worth an option because Calgary's offense, it was great against Winnipeg last week, but Winnipeg not a very good team. The best defensive option for me this week, BC Lions, hands down, $5,000. They've got Chris Rainey as well, a dynamic kick returner. His kick return yardage and any touchdowns he scores in the return game go to that DST output as well. That's significant when you're talking about taking BC's defense and special teams unit, and they've been tremendous. I mean, first in points allowed so far, second in passing yards, rushing yards, and total yards allowed in the CFL through the first 2 weeks. This BC Lions defense, they're for real. They're playing like it, flying to the football, getting pressure on the quarterback. I think the BC Lions defense, $5,000, the clear choice for me from a DST perspective here in Week 3 of CFL DraftKings. All right, that's going to wrap it up for me and my look at CFL Week 3 from a DFS and DraftKings perspective. As always, I'm Ian Cameron on behalf of thesportsgeek.com. Good luck filling out your lineups. Good luck this week in CFL DFS, and I'll be back next week to take a look at Week 4 in CFL action.